because you were sick, it wasn't on purpose.
Thank you, baby.
Oh shit.
Oh, that's Fridays.
It's Friday.
Out your food and drinks. Please throw out your food and drinks. Thank you. Anyone with food and drinks will be escorted out. Drinks.
Everyone please be seated. The debate will start now. On behalf of the 2022-2023 IPLE class, we would like to take a moment and thank you all for coming to today's debates. Thank you to Mr. Nichols and the Sound and Light crew. Before we continue on with the debates, we would like to remind all students to be respectful to the candidates and refrain from talking and using your phones and any other distractions during the debates. The structure of today's debates will proceed in the following format. We will hear two debates today. The first will focus on prohibiting homeschooling in New Jersey. The speakers will be Rebecca Steer from the Munch Party and Alex Baxter from the Matrix Party. The second debate will focus on increasing and modernizing U.S. nuclear arsenal. The speakers in this debate will be Hunter Takwian from the Matrix Party and Kashiv Patel from the Munch Party. Each speaker will have a total of 7 minutes to speak and answer questions. After each speaker presents their speech, the opposing speaker will have the opportunity to ask one question. After both speakers present their arguments, the audience will be allowed to ask 2 questions. After both debates have been completed, we will open up the floor for questions from the audience. Thank you. As of right now, we may call up the candidates for prohibiting homeschooling in New Jersey and their campaign managers, please. Mr. Steer, you may start your speech.
I don't know about you, but my definition of freeing my mind does not include the government having complete control over it. Bureaucrats think they're the only ones who know what's right for the youth of America. But is sitting at a desk for 7 hours a day, moving through the halls only when a bell instructs you to, and getting no sleep really what's best? Perhaps some kids prefer it, but it's not ideal for everyone. Public school is an awesome concept. It's structured, it has standards, and it provides a lot of kids a space away from home. But it's only been the white horse that my opponent thinks it has for a short amount of time. We've built empires, we've put food on the table, we've decided what morals to abide by our parents, by our community, by our elders. And hands-on experience. Humans are endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the key to that is choice. My name is Rebecca Steer, and I am running for state senate in order to ensure that you retain choice over your education, because every child deserves a meaningful education. By banning homeschooling, the government is telling you that you don't know what's right for your family. Children are sitting ducks while shooters open fire. They're restricted from learning about history and current events because free information online is blocked at school. 11-year-olds like Felicia Loalbo are harassed and compelled to kill themselves in a school bathroom because their bullies are not being controlled. Some administrations actively stifle free speech and forbid students from praying at school. Students are forced to attend schools with poor academics because of their zip codes. Is a public school in Camden equal to Mountain Lakes? We have over 1.3 million students in New Jersey public schools. So let's add 300,000 overnight. Let's add an additional $4 billion tax dollars on education annually, totaling almost $40 billion out of your pockets. Let's redraw every district's boundaries. Let's run out of seats in classrooms. Let's scrounge for thousands of new teachers during a national shortage, just to meet the backwards demands of my opponent. I'm sorry, but it's just not that easy, nor does it make sense. Until we can solve these problems, how can we force our children to suffer? Homeschooled children excel. They participate in co-op programs, they attend weekly meetings in person with other kids, they complete courses through accredited online schools, and they receive individualized care and attention from tutors. They succeed at prioritization and time management, and in this way are more motivated and prepared for college. They succeed. They go to attend top colleges, accept high-paying jobs. They're not insulated. They have the same opportunities to socialize that you and I do with town programs, school sports, and activities. And believe it or not, they can even go outside and play with their siblings and their neighbors. Homeschooling allows for flexibility. Parents make the choice on a year-by-year basis. Some families move around for work, for our military, or have children who are sick in the hospital. New Jersey is building up our film economy. How are these actors supposed to work? Students can complete the schoolwork they need to without extra filler assignments. They take their time, they focus on their weak areas. They have free time to volunteer, to work on passion projects, to seek out internships, to apply skills and learn from professionals. How is this in the state's interest to ban something that's so clearly beneficial? The First Amendment guarantees us two things: the freedom to believe and the freedom to act on those beliefs. Private schools have different requirements for seat time and might include religious ideologies and ceremonies in their curriculums. Do we ban those too? That would be completely outrageous, but not according to Matrix's president. We're violating the Establishment Clause by preferring some groups' thoughts over others. We're violating the Free Exercise Clause by shutting down some schools who have ideological affiliations. Do we ban tools that are not from the government, like Quizlet and Khan Academy, because again, they're not the state government? Now, the Amish are a farming community. A public school doesn't make sense for their lifestyle. In the case of Wisconsin v. Yoder, the Supreme Court decided that their right to homeschool is more important than the state's interest. Forbidding them from homeschooling was unconstitutional. So there you have it. Matrix is trying to burn the Bill of Rights to ash. A public school diploma is valuable, but unless students can apply the concept they learned, it's just a piece of paper. Education is not one size fits all. Life isn't one size fits all. Stripping you of your intellectual freedom is not only unconstitutional, but it's not solving any problems. While homeschooling may not be the best option for all families, we cannot strip this fundamental liberty. We cannot deny a meaningful education from the many students for whom it is. If a family has an interest in the means to homeschool and do it effectively, let them. As a writer, scientist, inventor, statesman, diplomat, printer, publisher, political philosopher, and founding father Ben Franklin once said, "Tell me and I'll forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn." And by the way, Ben Franklin, he was homeschooled too. Vote Rebecca Steer for state senate to allow homeschooling. Vote Munch.
Mr. Baxter, you may ask your question.
All right, thank you. All right, now, Ms. Steer, you talk a lot about the benefits of homeschooling, how in all cases, in almost every case, it's much more beneficial to the student, it's much better for the student, and it's better for everyone overall to be homeschooled. Yet, I seem to notice that you are a public school student, you do attend a public school, and you have no plans to attend homeschool. So can you please explain that to these students, how your opinion and all your facts that you bring to the table show that homeschooling is much better, yet you yourself attend public school? Please explain that.
Mr. Baxter, I attend public school because it's the right decision for me and my family. I never said that homeschool was the right choice for everyone. In fact, I don't believe it's the right choice for everyone. But to take the opportunity away from people who have the means, the time, the resources, and everything to homeschool would be completely egregious. I mean, just because some people can't do something doesn't mean that everyone shouldn't be able to. For me, homeschooling wouldn't work. But for so many people it does, and you can't just take that away because it doesn't work for a small group of people, because it works for some people and it's much better for them. Thank you.
Mr. Baxter, you may start your speech.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'd like to begin with a quote from James Madison, the 4th President of the United States and the father of the Constitution. He said, "Learned institutions ought to be favorite objects with every free people. They throw that light over the public mind which is the best security against crafty and dangerous encroachments on the public liberty." James Madison was homeschooled. My name is Alexander Baxter, and I'm running to be your state senator. I'm going to keep my speech short and sweet today. I'll talk about 4 things: the law in New Jersey right now in regards to homeschooling, my changes to that law, the issues with homeschooling right now, and then finally, I'll end by addressing my opponent's claims at our previous debate about the public school system and putting it to the test with all of you. So the law for homeschooling right now, what is it? Well, firstly, all parents can take their kids out of school, and all they have to do for that is email the school. 1 email, and you're out of public school. And you can be taken out indefinitely. Secondly, the parent needs no certificate or degree to teach their child and doesn't even have to provide a transcript to anyone on what subjects their student has learned. Finally, the parent decides when their child graduates, and the parents are responsible for writing the transcript of that child. A full and complete transcript is provided by the school for all public school students. We'll come back to this later. Now, my changes. What are they going to be? Well, the first change that I'm going to instate is requiring students with the ability to go to public school. However, if you're ill, if you have some other reason, for example, the military, and you have to move around a lot, for not being able to go to school, you will not have to. My opponent has claimed that every single person, regardless of illness, ability, has to go to public school. And we know that's not the case. All right? My opponent is putting words in my mouth, which have never been said. It's unfortunate, but it happens. All right? So I'd like to clarify for all of you, if there is a medical excuse, if there's an illness, if you have to move around a lot, you are not required to go to public school in person. However, you will have to complete that time virtually. You will have to be in class and complete the required seat time that you would here just online. What will this do? This will make sure that every student, regardless of whatever situation they're in, has access to an education that is good enough for them. We want an education for everyone, regardless of illness, regardless of military status, that works. We want one that's proven to work, and we want one that works for everybody. All right. What are these changes going to do? Well, they'll do a few things. Firstly, it'll allow the parent who is staying home teaching their child to get a job. Now, what is that going to do, you might ask? This will improve the lives of the entire family. Every family involved will have more income coming in. Instead of one parent working, we'll now have two. Secondly, it will give the child who is previously being homeschooled a real education with real interactions with other students. Now, what are the issues with homeschooling right now? Well, as I mentioned, there are quite a few, and if I were to talk about all of them, we'd be here all day. And as I said, trying to keep it short. So I'll just explain a few. First, homeschooled kids, as previously mentioned, are taught by their parents. 15% of these parents have not completed a high school education, and they're teaching their kids. 16% of them have only received a high school diploma and nothing higher. 31% of homeschooled children are taught by a parent who either didn't complete high school or only completed high school. I believe it was mentioned in our last debate that college is expensive, and maybe the parents didn't have enough money to get a college degree. However, the sad reality is that many choose not to. You also must remember that a huge majority of the parents teaching their kids don't have a job. Their family is surviving off of one source of income because of a choice they are making. What does this really mean? A study found that students who had a family who they thought were able to afford to send them to college were 58% more likely to want to go to college. Individuals with a family that is reliant upon only one source of income are 73% less likely to go to college. 73% less likely. Another issue is social interactions. Students in public school interact with new people and friends and teachers every single day. They learn to maintain multiple conversations over a long period of time and learn to talk more respectfully to people in positions of power. They also learn firsthand about power dynamics. The real world is give and take, let's be honest. If you want something, you have to give something. For example, if you want higher pay at your job, you have to agree to work more hours. Give and take. Homeschoolers don't learn this dynamic. That's why they're less successful when trying to obtain a job and slower to receive promotions. Public school kids have a proverbial leg up when it comes to social skills, and it shows in the real world and the job market. Now for my final part. My opponent has made a lot of claims about public schools. She said that they are unsafe for homeschooled kids because of the raging drug problems in our schools. Now, I've gone to public school my whole life and never been afflicted by this issue that she claims has taken over our school systems. I'd like to test that claim right here, right now. Can I get a raise of hands? How many drug dealers do we have in the audience? No one? No one? Meth, cocaine, heroin? None? Come on, guys. According to Miss Steer over here, there's a raging issue. We don't have one? Amazing. Well, I'm not seeing any hands. So everyone, I'd like a round of applause for everybody who hasn't sold drugs, who hasn't done drugs. Thank you, guys. Teachers in the audience, I hope you guys are seeing this. Your students have all done a terrific job avoiding the drug dealers that Miss Steer would have you believe hand out bags of meth in the bathrooms. As such, I think the students in the audience today should get no homework or classwork for the rest of the week. Does that sound fair to you guys? All right. Ms. Steer also describes how dangerous it is to be in a public school.
Mr. Baxter, please finish up your thought.
All right. She also describes how dangerous it is to be in a public school due to the danger of school shootings. May I remind you that in our school alone, we have 2 trained police officers ready to respond. Think that's not enough? The Nashville shooter who killed 6 people switched their target to a different school because
Mr.
it had
Baxter,
more
please
security.
finish up your thought.
I'd like to end with a quote from JFK. He said, "Let us think of education as the means of developing our greatest abilities, because in each of us there is a private hope and dream which fulfilled can be translated into benefit for everyone, and greater strength for our nation. One person can make a difference, and everyone should try. Vote Matrix." Thank you.
Ms. Steer, you may ask your question.
Mr. Baxter, not only did you change your platform from your last speech, mention things that were never discussed in your platform in the first place, and actually advocate for homeschooling policies, but you're just blatantly making up lies and trying to defame my name. And I really have to ask, what benefit does public school have over homeschooling when you never mentioned anything? All you did was fabricate things that I said and agree with my policies that homeschooling does benefit children.
All right. I'd like to address this head on. Anybody who was at the debate yesterday will remember that Ms. Steer's exact words were, "It's not safe for homeschooled kids." And the reasoning was drugs. That's it. Those are the simple facts. That's what happened. If they remember something different, that's not on me. Now to the second point, that I'm just making up facts. The reasoning behind why public school, the examples of why public school is better than homeschooled are abundant. As I said already, there are so many reasons we'd be here all day. My apologies to Ms. Steer if I wasn't able to get to all of them in the 5 minutes that I had yesterday, but I brought up 5 minutes more of examples, so I think that's good enough for today. I think it's good enough for tomorrow, and I think it's good enough for the future of American public schools and students. Thank you.
The audience will now be allowed to ask 2 questions. Someone in the back.
Jonah, step up, baby.
So, question for the Matrix Party. Would taxes have to be raised to support the new students coming into schools? Oh, thank you.
That's a wonderful question. So the answer to that, in short, is no. So Ms. Steer has explained that 300,000 students will be put into public schools because there are 300,000 kids being homeschooled right now. That simply isn't the case. If you actually look it up, I challenge you all, take out your phones right now because we're keeping them in school with Matrix. Take out your phones right now, look up the number, is nowhere near that amount. Will taxes need to be raised? Short answer, no. There's a few thousand homeschooled kids at a time that would come back into the public school, and the facts actually are, and Ms. Steer has said them herself, homeschooled kids do come back to public school occasionally. Parents will analyze it at a year-to-year basis. They'll remove them sometimes, take them out, put them back in, what have you. We have these kids cycling through the system. What we want to do is keep them here. The education at a public school is much better than at home. That's why the parents put them back in. What we want to do is keep them there so that education remains at a higher level. Thank you.
We will now accept a question for the Munch Party.
You have defended the choice of a student to be homeschooled, but the choice is really up to the parents. And there are many cases of parents not having their child's best interest in mind. Some kids are forced to go to religious schools or forced to get pulled out of school because they think that the school is teaching critical race theory or LGBTQ issues, which is just blatantly false. So how do we protect children of racist and bigoted parents from being indoctrinated?
Thank you for your question. So it's up to the parents to decide what they think is best for their kids. And there are homeschooling associations, specifically in New Jersey, the New Jersey Homeschool Association. It ensures that these homeschool environments maintain a proper environment and a proper climate for these kids to learn. At the end of the day, we can't save children from their parents who believe in bigoted things and religious indoctrination, because when they go to public school, guess what? They come home at the end of the day to the same parents. So no matter what, you can't really escape that sort of thing. But I think that the issue that you're saying of parents not agreeing with school curriculums, that's an issue that we need to solve by bringing more attention to our public schools and ensuring in our public schools that we teach these sort of things, that parents have a choice in what their kids are learning, and that kids are learning facts, and no matter what that is, that everything that our kids are learning in general is objective. And that way that everybody is included, everybody is learning the truth, everybody is learning stuff that's inclusive, and everybody is educated properly. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you guys to sit back down. Mr. Takwian and Mr. Patel may please approach.
Is this a
Mr.
good
Takwian,
distance?
you may now start.
Okay. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm nervous right now. But it's not because I'm standing here in front of you. It's not because of all of you. What I'm nervous about is what my opponent is trying to push. I'm nervous about his Operation Hellcat, his initiative to increase our nuclear arsenal, his initiative to bring us closer to war, and his initiative to put you all in danger. Now, me standing up here in front of you pales in comparison to my opponent's goals. It's insignificant. That me risking the chance of being embarrassed is nothing than risking the lives of all of you here. Now, what makes me nervous is that my opponent wants more nukes in the world. What makes me nervous is that he wants to bring us closer to war. Now, it's a legitimate concern with Russia and China increasing their arsenal for the American people, and it's a legitimate concern for the American government. But I will tell all of you that by voting for my opponent's solution not only brings us closer to nuclear war, but if we do start expanding our nuclear arsenal, then we enter an arms race which historically has proven to put us all in danger and again bring us closer to war. Hi, my name is Hunter Takwian, and I'm running for a House of Representatives seat against the issue of expanding our nuclear arsenal. Now I want you guys all to close your eyes and think for a second. I'm serious. When I say the word nuclear bomb, what do you guys think? Now my opponent wants to add nuclear bombs for safety and defense. Now I don't think defense when I think nuclear bomb, and I certainly don't think safety. I think of the atomic bombs. I think of Hiroshima, and I think of Nagasaki. I think of 226,000 casualties in just these two bombings. Now, that was in the 40s. Modern day non-strategic warheads can yield the weaker ones, the weakest nuclear bombs that we have out there can yield up to 20 times that of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's what my opponent wants to expand. That's what he wants more of. Now, let's go back in time for a second. Let's look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's look at the Cold War. What was the Cold War? Specifically, it was a nuclear arms race between the US and Russia. Now, what happened during that time? Tensions were so high, so paper thin, that kids like you and people like me, instead of doing math or hiding under their desks, they were prepared and accepted the reality that at any point and at any time, a bomb could fall out of the air and kill all of you. Just like that. That's the sound of the future that my opponent wants. Silence. Millions of lives lost. There's no one here to protest if we allow my opponent to push his initiative. Now, historically speaking, militarization leads to war. It leads to more death. Now, the only difference between militarization and what my opponent is pushing is that he's trying to militarize nuclearly. Now, we're not talking about tanks for the Army. We're not talking about a few boats for the Navy, or even a few planes for the Air Force. We are talking about weapons of massive destruction. Now, we know about the Cold War. We know about the Cuban Missile Crisis. We know what my opponent is pushing for and what it leads to. Now, history is doomed to repeat itself, only if we are foolish enough to allow it to do so. Don't allow history to repeat itself. Now, I'm going to bring up an analogy for you guys. Let's look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. Now, tensions are high. It's sort of like a hostage situation. Russia is holding Ukraine hostage. Now, when we have a situation like this, the US, what do we do in a hostage scenario? Do we come in and say we're also going to blow the place up? Does that does that give us a solution? Does it resolve the issue? No. Usually, we send in a hostage negotiator. We send in someone that tries to compromise. We send in someone that tries to limit the damage that's done, and we send someone to lower the tensions of the situation. That should be the same goal that America has pushing forward, and it has been historically. They've signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the SALT Act, and the START Treaty, all of which agree that demilitarization or denuclearization is the goal of US and other countries going forward. Now, let's say I agreed with my opponent. Let's say I wanted more war. Let's say I wanted to turn our backs on all the treaties and agreements that we've signed in the past 100 years. Economically, we couldn't even do that, even if we wanted to. The US is $30 trillion in debt. $1 trillion of that belongs to China alone. Now, my opponent will say it doesn't cost that much. We can do it simply. But the fact of the matter is we're already spending way more than any other country. The US already spends over $800 billion on its military defense spending. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. That's almost 3 times that of China, and it's way more that of Russia. Now, let's think of this. Economically, we hold dollar hegemony. We are the #1 economy in the world. Going for my opponent's initiative, this Project Hellcat to increase our nuclear arsenal, will push us away from other trade partners, like China. Now, US economy is heavily dependent on imports, and so heavily dependent on imports that China is our #1 importer, our #1 trade partner. Our imports spend $564 billion on China alone. That's 17% of our imports. That's nearly 1/5 of all of our goods coming into the country from China alone. We would alienate ourselves from countries like China and trade partners going forward by increasing our nuclear arsenal. Now, we simply cannot afford to make these mistakes. We cannot distance ourselves and scare off potential trade partners. We cannot alienate ourselves from them. We cannot go and become an isolationist country in a market that runs on globalization. Now, lots of you may be asking, we're the Matrix Party. Does anyone know what the X stands for? It stands for tenaciously, which means yearning for change, political change. Now, all of you should yearn for this change. We should yearn to change the path and not to continue on the path of destruction that we are currently on. Be the ones to deviate the course. Be the ones to change this country for the better. Now, I'm supposed to represent you guys. I'm supposed to reflect your ideas in my legislation.
Mr. Takwian, please finish up your thought.
Your best interests are my best interests as well. So, my best interest is in the well-being of the American people. I'm not telling you we should get rid of all of our nuclear bombs. I'm not telling you we should leave ourselves completely defenseless. What I'm telling you is you guys should vote for yourselves. Vote for a better country. Vote for a safer country. Vote for a smarter one, and vote for a more integral one. My name is Hunter Takwian. I hope you vote for me, and I hope you vote for Matrix. Thank you.
Mr. Patel, you may now ask your question.
Thank you. So even after all the statistics previously presented and tensions worldwide ramping up, you think it's better to just sit like ducks? Is there an actual solution to the current doom hanging over us?
Thank you for your question.
You're welcome.
So you said, is there a current solution? I think there are many solutions. There are many avenues in which we can go about this. What we won't do is ramp up our nuclear bombs, because what does that show other countries? What are we preparing for? Now, nuclear bombs historically have never been used for defense. They're used for retaliation. What would we be retaliating for? Can be seen as only an act of war. Now, our other solutions, NATO has 31 countries involved, all of which agree that we should denuclearize. Less nukes in the world leads to less nuclear war. Our solution should not be to close our eyes and ramp up our military and say, screw it, let's scare everyone. We shouldn't lead by fear-mongering. We should try to make peace. That is the initiative of the U.S. and has been the initiative of the U.S. That's my answer.
The audience will now be allowed to ask 2 questions. Sorry, hold on. Mr. Patel, you may now go.
All right. I urge you to look to your left. Now look to your right. Get to know the people around you. Now imagine this. They're all dead. Your mother, dead. Your favorite uncle, dead. Your family dog, dead. All your friends and family are dead because our government has decided to limit the modernization of our nuclear arsenal, making ourselves an easy target for our greatest international threats. Now, this isn't just some improbable nightmare, but rather a real risk in our future if nothing is done. Our main threats, Russia and China, have an incredible number of bombs that is actively growing while we continue to disarm our own. My name is Krishiv Patel, and I'm running to have a seat on your House of Representatives in this upcoming election to create a greater and safer America for all of you. But as of right now, we are not in a position to negotiate with Russia or China as we are unable to deter them in any way. The only solution? Reinvent our arsenal. Specifically, we will be limiting our abundance of strategic warheads. To clarify, we will be replacing our old, unsustainable bombs with ones that are in touch with the modern world and technologies. We are simply making do with what we have and improving the performance of our outdated weapons. We call this Operation Hellcat. Now, even though Russia and China have several arms agreements, they are actively disobeying them. These treaties set a precedent for international cooperation regarding nuclear warfare. From this vast list of violations, 2 famous examples are the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and the New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. Now, Putin announced in 2018 that 5 new nuclear systems had been developed with the capabilities to defeat the U.S. in a nuclear war. No country left unprovoked needs 5 new nuclear systems in a single year. Now, let me just throw this out for all of you. My opponent had claimed that the U.S. has the strongest nuclear arsenal in the world, which is simply wrong, because the Federation of National Scientists ranks it as Russia, not us. Russia has almost 2,000 more nuclear weapons than we do, and these numbers only are going to continue to grow, along with China, who operates many ballistic missiles, which outrange the U.S. counterparts. China has recently expanded their arsenal to 400 tactical warheads, soon to become 1,500 within the next decade. Now, you know what is stupid? Sitting back and doing nothing. Sitting back during China and Russia's nuclear arms buildup would only reinforce their view that expanding their nuclear forces provides them with a military advantage. Developing a regionally present nuclear weapon would help remove any misconception that the U.S. would not be able to retaliate for an attack with a strike of their own, dissuading our enemy from attacking in the first place. China cutting off trade with us is a valid concern. However, companies have already recognized hefty import tariffs and rising labor costs associated with doing business with China, and are now aware of other options from countries in the Southeast and Southeast Asia. These alternative production countries can provide the same materials, the same goods, the same services as China without the hassle of high-priced tariffs and increasingly expensive Chinese labor. U.S. officials are also already working with European nations to reduce dependency upon Chinese trade through a buyer's club. Now, my opponent has painted this picture that the Munch Party is a group of war hawks. There seems to be a misunderstanding. I completely agree with Mr. Taknoian when he says that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were unforgettable tragedies. But he's making it seem as if we want to develop more atomic, hydrogen, and thermonuclear bombs. However, Fat Man and Little Boy are the exact weapons that we are trying to replace with smaller ones that we can actually use without decimating a city. The claim that this will become another arms race is also just completely flawed as well, because the mistakes of the past were made by presidents who still thought that the bigger bomb meant the better arsenal. Times have changed, technologies have improved, and we have learned from the past. I want the most foolproof way to protect the people of the United States. It is naive for Mr. Takwian to think that we should simply sit this one out. He describes Russia as this wild animal that we are cornering, and in turn it panics and goes nuclear. But would you rather let such a beast roam free and wreak havoc when we have the ability to keep Russia in check? Even candidate Brisson herself has stated that Russia will become an adversary for the West in the near future. A threat. Founding father Alexander Hamilton has once stated, "If all men were angels, no government would be necessary." If every nation were good and promised never to attack other countries, then yes, everything would be perfect and we wouldn't have to do anything. Unfortunately, however, a world like that simply does not exist. Formulating policy based on nothing but political promise alone is nothing less than reckless when it comes to making us less secure. The treaties that my opposition cites are incredibly old, and our adversaries are ignoring them, while the arms agreements that I cite are in touch with the modern world. Mr. Takwian is pushing an outdated narrative. Mr. Takwian claims that my proposal would plunge the U.S. into further debt, but if we simply reallocate funds from our larger bombs that we don't need to the ones that we do need, this will give us $100 billion to use to modernize our nuclear arsenal. Now, given this, the U.S. will be able to develop systems capable of defending and protecting the United States and all those who reside within her. There is no other alternative that is as safe and secure as Operation Hellcat. Now, Mr. Takwian also states that it would cost upwards of $1.5 trillion to modernize and expand our arsenal. To refurbish our outdated warheads, it would only cost $35 billion, starting from the 21 to 2030 period. Not the false statistic that he has stated, which, might I add, is the third false statistic that he has stated. Now, I'd like to conclude my time today by noting that, looking around, I see different people. I see people of different ethnicities, people of different social standings, but what unites us? That American flag, American blood, it courses through each and every one of our veins, and it is our duty as Americans, as Munches, to uphold such liberty and justice, not just for us, but for our children and our children's children, and for generations to come. So I urge you, remember, America runs on Duncan, and America runs on Munch. Vote for Operation Hellcat. Vote for a better future, and most importantly, vote for the Munch Party to create a greater and safer America for all of you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Takwian, you may now ask your question.
Thank you. I have a little question about the logic of my opponent. Now, he mentions that, everything I cite is old, but just because it's old, should it be ignored? Essentially, a solution is to bomb whoever we feel threatened by. He talks about American precedent and what we stand for. And by going against Russia, by increasing our nuclear arsenal just because they are, or because China is, our precedent no longer becomes integral. It becomes monkey see, monkey do. Now, I question how this brings us further away from war and how this makes us more safe. You say you want to replace bombs like Fat Boy and the ones used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but U.S. non-strategic warheads are often framed as smaller, lower yield nuclear weapons, and it's implied that they can cause less damage, but they are actually 20 times more destructive, 300 kilotons more destructive than that used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I question how you think a more destructive weapon, a more destructive country, brings more peace and makes us safer.
So I'd like to start by saying thank you so much for your question. And I'd like to also start by saying that times have changed. Technology has improved, and therefore these treaties from before, which reference bombs that could blow up half the world, those are outdated, and we don't need them. What we do need is these new treaties that we are bringing in. And to reference again, his statistics are once again wrong. Who would have thought? So we do have the capabilities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We do have that. However, a nuclear bomb does not necessarily mean that it has to cause that much destruction. There are nuclear bombs that can cause less destruction, ones that we can actually use. We don't need to blow up, what'd you say, 40 times that amount? We have bombs that can blow up 40 times, but we also have bombs that are less than half, less than a fourth, less than an eighth of that amount. So it is illogical and actually a flawed way of thinking to think that our weakest bombs are stronger than Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
The audience will now be allowed to ask 2 questions.
This is aimed at the Matrix Party. It has been stated by CNBC and other newswires that Saudi Arabia has been in contact with both China and Russia, forming an alliance. These countries are already in talking with supporting each other with other resources. How do you expect us to fight against that much military power?
Thank you for your question. Hold on, let me find this, the stat. So you mentioned that other countries are allying together and are also in negotiation to go at war with us. But may I remind you that China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are 3 countries. U.S. has allies with over 25 countries. They are part of NATO, which is a part of 31 countries. The Global Firepower Index has our military ranked #1 in the world globally. We are allied with strong countries such as Canada, Germany, and the UK. UK, India, and France are all our allies, and all are also nuclear armed. So I'm a little confused that my opponent is worried about nuclear deterrent when we are allied with other strong countries, and we can work together with other strong countries to bring nuclear disarmament rather than push for more nukes in this world.
Any questions for the Munch Party?
I have a question for the Munch Party. The 1960s MAD doctrine, which is still relevant today, states that it's in all parties' interests' best favor to avoid nuclear war, as no country would survive it. So what is the point in expanding or upgrading when all sides already have the capacity to destroy the world?
Thank you so much for that question. That is the point I wanted to bring up. So it is true that that document does exist. However, there are already increases in our nuclear arsenal. Not from us, I'm sorry. There are increases in China and Russia's nuclear arsenal, and I understand it might be a little bit hard for a concept that means more bombs means less destruction, but it's incredibly important to understand the concept of deterrence. If we have a capability to defend ourselves and retaliate, then other countries won't attack us. That is the simplest way to put it. If they attack and we have nothing, then they have no fear as to attack us. However, if we also are armed in this way, they will not be attacking us, as they also fear mutual destruction. That is the simple of what a deterrent is. Thank you for your question.
I now ask Ms. Steer and her campaign manager and Mr. Bachter and his campaign manager up to the stage, please. We will now have time for 2 questions.
This question is for the Matrix Party on homeschooling. So you said when your opposer asked what were the benefits of homeschooling, you said there were a lot. You never named one. Can we get one? Thank you.
What? You asked for the benefits of homeschooling? I mean, in her view, but I mean, I'm just stating her views, but okay. It's okay. So an essential restatement of it is her view is that you get more concentration because you are by yourself, you're not distracted by other students. Another thing she said was you can essentially have a personalized lesson plan, was one of the things where you can essentially build it yourself, build it with your parents. Similar thing. Rebecca, you want to add anything? Because it's really your question.
Yeah, thank you for advocating for my platform.
Next question for the Munch Party.
I have a question for Mr. Patel. According to the Federation of American Scientists, currently Russia has 645 more nuclear weapons than the U.S. It costs $16.3 million to make a nuclear weapon. In order to tie with Russia, the U.S. must spend over $10 billion. On top of your plan to refurbish old weapons, won't taxes have to be significantly raised in order to fund such expenses?
No, we don't have to raise taxes because in my speech I have stated that we are reallocating funds. We have the resources, we have the means, therefore we should be able to do it. And I believe in every sense we are able to because we have these funds. But thank you for your question.
Thank you to all candidates for the debate today. Thank you all for coming. The voting will begin on Monday. Thank you.
Vote the Munch Party. Thank you so much.